Good morning. Welcome to another edition of PreMarket PulseScan. With yours truly, that's the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports that we place in your hand each and every trading day. All right, let's jump right into it because we got a lot to go over this morning. Without any further ado, let's take a look at the overnight markets, and then we'll take a sneak peek at some charts. All right, so the Dow futures is down 566 points, trading at 27,035. The NASDAQ 100 futures is down 167.5 points at 10,761 even. Even the S&P 500 down 56, even at 32.60 and a quarter. Russell My Hustle down 38.5, trading at 1497.1. Bitcoin Futures Composite Index down 270, trading at 10,610. Nat gas is down a whopping 11 cents at $1.93. Wow, that thing came crashing down. Crude oil down 75 cents a barrel at $40.57 a barrel. The long bond is up 1 and 3/30 seconds, trading at 177 and 3/30 seconds. Gold futures are down $37, man, at $1,925 an ounce. Silver down almost a buck, down 99 cents at $26.13 an ounce, threatening to go into the 25 handle like I was warning you guys last week. The dollar is strengthening this morning, up almost 50 pips at 93.46. The euro dollar down 82 pips at 117.92. Pound sterling down 93 pips at 128.40. The Aussie down 54 pips at 72.47. Canadian dollar off 50 pips at 132.57. The euro yen is down a full point. Good grief. 115 pips. The euro yen is down 115 pips, trading at 122.72. The dollar yen down 27 pips at 104.28. And the Kiwi is off 65 pips at 66.95. The soybeans are down 4 and a quarter at 10.39 and a quarter. Corn down 1.5 at 3.77 even, and wheat down 2 at 5.73 even. All right, so that is what these overnight markets are looking like. Here's the overnight market news. All right, global stock slide as France, Spain, and the UK record thousands of new COVID-19 cases. European bank shares tumbled following reports that they moved large sums of suspicious transactions over a period of nearly 20 years. Let that sink in for a moment. In other words, someone has been moving large sums of money for the past 20 years. That's what we call misappropriation of funds, malfeasance, manipulation. People go to prison for stuff like that. So yeah, something to think about. Where is the money going, and who's doing the funneling? TikTok owner ByteDance is reportedly eyeing a $60 billion valuation for TikTok Global. Oracle and Walmart will take 12.5 and 7.5% positions in TikTok Global and pay a combined $12 billion if the asking price is met. European bank shares tumble after leaked files unveil suspicious money flows over $2 trillion. FinCEN files claimed that JP Morgan, Barclays, Standard Chartered, Deutsche Bank, and BNY Mellon had the highest reported amount of activity. Can you say money laundering? Oh, you didn't know that most of these big banks weren't banks at all, but rather glorified laundromats? Jack Ma's Ant Group raises its funding target to $35 billion, likely making it the largest IPO ever. That would not be the largest IPO ever. The largest IPO ever of all time is that Saudi oil joint venture, which is valued at like, a Googleplex $1 trillion. So no, that is not the largest, sir. When Ant goes public, it will likely earn a massive valuation that puts it ahead of Saudi Aramco's record-shattering 25.6 billion IPO last year. That's not true because technically speaking, the newswire said it was $1 trillion. All right, so I don't know where they get the 25.6 billion. They said it was $1 trillion. I have the paperwork on that said it was $1 trillion, the largest of all time of any sector. So whatever. And how can that be more valuable than an actual commodity, a natural resource? We know what this is. People go to war over natural resources. They don't go to war over phone apps. Nikola founder Trevor Milton resigns following fraud allegations. Stefan Gertsky will become chairman. This morning is the headlines is all about fraud and embezzlement. What? How peculiar. All right, let's see what else we got. Let's see. Okay, here we go. A disturbing new all-time low in the market just flew under the radar as stocks hit record highs. And one Wall Street expert warns it implies years of bleak returns for young investors. A popular investing strategy that's struggling lately is putting young stock market investors in a bind, says the Luthold Group's Doug Ramsey. That's probably because he's getting his face ripped off. Global stocks are down. In Europe, Germany's DAX fell 3.3%. Britain's FTSE 100 fell 3%. And the Euro Stoxx 50 fell 2.9%. In Asia, China's Shanghai Composite fell 0.6%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell 2.2%. And Japan's Nikkei was about flat at the close. And of course, here in the U.S., pretty much everything's down between 1.3 and 1.8%, respectively. On the data docket, we got the U.S. 6-month and 3-month T-bill auctions, and the Federal Reserve's Brainard speech are due today, which brings us to another issue that you need to be aware of. Are you ready for this? Because this one is crazy. So basically, the Fed, last week, we had the Fed week, so the market was pretty tame going into that, right? Well, if you thought that was something, hang on to your seatbelts. The Fed is not speaking once or twice, but 3 times this week. So things are getting quite weird at the moment. That's right. The Fed's going to be talking 3 times. Powell would take the stand not once, not twice, but 3 times this week as he doubles down on levitating markets. So he's going to be speaking at 3 different times, 3 events. All right, so you need to be aware of that because that's a big deal, and that is a market-moving event. So as we speak right now, here's how it's shaping up. So today, we got the U.S. August Chicago Fed National Activity Index. Central banks ECB's Halsman and Fed's Bernard are going to be speaking. And on the politics side, we got voting continues in the Italian constitutional referendum and regional elections. Then for Tuesday, tomorrow, we got central banks Fed Chairman Powell speaking before the House Financial Services Committee on the CARES Act, and Fed's Evans on the BOE, Governor Bailey is speaking. Then on Wednesday, we got the Fed Chairman Powell speaking before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis. Then we got the Fed Vice Chair Quarles speaking on the economic outlook, and the Fed's Mester, Evans, and Rosgren on their daily talk. Then on Thursday, The ECB publishes economic bulletins, Central Bank of Turkey and Bank of Mexico monetary policy decision. Bank of Japan publishes minutes of July meeting. Fed Chair Powell testifies before the Senate Banking Committee on the CARES Act. BOE Governor Bailey and Fed's Bullard and Evans will speak. And then on Friday, the Fed's Williams will speak. Man, oh man, oh man. It's going to be a busy docket this week for Fed speak. So just be aware that markets could out of nowhere act like, the deep ocean, and all of a sudden a storm appears out of nowhere. Just be prepared for that, because when volatility is just waiting for somewhere to go, that's what happens. Plus, don't forget, last Friday we had the quad witch, so there was just a lot going on here. Now let's see what else. I have a question here in the live chat about the extended hours and pre-market trading hours as far as trading equities, stocks, ETFs, the like. All right, so not everyone has access to trading those markets. All right, it would depend on your broker who you're dealing with. I would not suggest trading pre-market and extended hours, only because those markets tend to be super thin. And the only way for you to trade them is with limit orders. You can't use, the sophisticated order types that we are accustomed to using. No if, and, or, none of that. No stops. You can't even place a market order. It has to be limit orders only. Limit orders to get in and limit orders to get out. So that kind of ties your hands a little bit, and you can't place stops. You literally have to sit there and monitor the market. Lord help you if your power goes out or your computer, gives with the ghost on you. You will be in a world of trouble. So I tend to stay away from pre-market extending hours. I tend to just trade the normal sessions. If you want any kind of overnight or early morning exposure, that's what the futures markets are for. All right, so you can trade the Dow, the S&P, the Russell, the NASDAQ. You can trade those futures, and they've even come out with the micro futures too now. So we already had the E-mini S&P and the mini Dow and all that, but now we got the micro Dow, the micro S&P, the micro NASDAQ, and the micro Russell. All right, so you can manage your risk a lot better just by trading those futures contracts. So if you need that, if you want some market exposure, then that's what you got to do. Now, there's a way to obtain market exposure in other markets as well, other than stocks and futures. So if you want to be able to have the opportunity to potentially profit from the equity markets without having direct equity market exposure, where you can trade day or night or evening or early morning, then you need to go to PulseWaveTrading.com and we will hook you up with that. There is a way to do that where you can manage your risk even tighter than that and still gain the same type of market exposure. All right. There's a way, if you want to operate in the energy markets, specifically crude oil markets, without trading crude oil futures, without trading crude oil ETFs or any type of oil stocks. There's still a way to get involved. And I'm not talking about options. And I'm not talking about CFDs. All right. So if you want to know more about that, go to PulseWaveTrading.com and we'll learn you a little something. And that also includes precious metals. You can get the precious metals exposure and have the liquidity that you need without trading the futures or the equities or ETFs as well. Once again, you hit me up at PulseWaveTrading.com and we can show you exactly how to do that. Excuse me. All right, so with that being said, now we're going to flip the script a little bit. Bear with me just for a second. I just want to show you a few things as far as where we are currently and where we have been. I think that's important for you to know. So I'm going to gather that. Just give me a quick second. I think this will be helpful for you. This is not something I do regularly, but I'm going to do it for you guys this morning because I want to hook you up. I want to show you a little something. I think this is a good lesson plan for today. So that way you guys can see things a little bit clearly from another perspective. All right, so I think we're ready to go. Let me go ahead and switch my camera for you, and let's get it. All right, so here is the chart. This first one here is the E-mini S&P 500. All right, so as you can see here, the market is continuing to go down, right? This is where we are today. This is where we are right now this morning. All right, you can see the market is giving us more downside production from the crash alert back here. We just been getting nothing but downside production. Remember the intraday price inflection point numbers I gave you for Take Back Friday? Well, the market failed, and I did warn you that that would open the door for more downside this week, and we had the potential for a lot of downside this week. All right, and we got a bearish weekly trend momentum reading. This market is still in a corrective phase, and the trend line support has failed on the E-mini S&P 500. And I want to show you this so you could get an idea what I was talking about. So it has failed, and we're now on our way to getting deeper inside of the Kumo cloud. So right now, the market bias coming into today is still to the downside. We have not put in a short, excuse me, my throat. We have not put in a short-term bottom. The next target, depending on how we close today, that would determine if the next target is going to be the bottom of the Kumo cloud here, or if we get some type of reversal. All right. Intraday reversals are not impossible. I have to tell you that. They're not impossible. Once again, intraday reversals are not impossible. All right. Not impossible. So we got to watch for that. We got to see what the market does. What does it want to show us, tell us today? Okay. So with that being said, that's just the E-mini S&P 500. Let's take a look at another market here. Let's look at gold this morning. Okay, so we come in today. All right, as you can see, same thing here. The trade is still to the downside with all rallies being sold. Now so far we got a successful test of the trend line support. Market has paused at the trend line support, just like we did back here when we got that last rally alert, and the market had a failed run. It ran up, gave us upside production, then failed. So now we're kind of setting up the same thing here. Believe it or not, in the gold futures, the bias is still to the long side of the market, with all pullbacks being bid. Every time we get down to test the trend line support, we get a bid. All right, so that's how this market is shaping up at this time, and we're still in a bull market. All right, still in a bull market, and right now the bias is to the upside. I think gold is probably going to pull the okie doke on a lot of people who are going to get caught short. I think that's like a bear trap setup. Here's the NASDAQ 100. So we come into the week with the same situation. It failed to put in a bottom on Friday. We're still getting that downside production from the crash alert here. So the market bias is still to the short side of the market, with any intraday rallies being sold off. Right now, for the NASDAQ, the trend line resistance overhead, it is obeying. All right, so this past support has now temporarily become resistance, and we got a bearish weekly trend momentum reading. But on the same token, it's also paused at the top of the Kumo cloud support for now, but that's just for now. Doesn't mean that the bottom of the Kumo cloud would not be the secondary target. What do I mean? Well, from the initial crash alert, when we got this nice downside production, the market came to the trend line support, and the support held. and it continued to hold. It held, right? Now we just broke that. All right. Last week we broke the trend line support. It no longer held, and now we're setting up for a much deeper correction unless we get a powerful intraday reversal today. All right. That's what needs to happen. We need a intraday reversal in order for this not to happen. So this is going to be interesting to see where we close today. It's going to be very, very important with the potential of being detrimental to the financial markets. Here's your crude oil futures. Okay, so we came into this week also with a crash alert on the crude oil, and we have gotten some downside production. All right, as this one is looking to get deeper into the Kumo cloud. So the bottom of the Kumo cloud is now in play for crude oil futures. All right, and as you can see, the trade is to the short side of the market right now. The bears have temporary control of this market, and we are in a bear market. Okay, so the trend line supports back here during the bear market rally finally failed. We failed. We got back up here, tested it, and now we're on our way back down again. Now, the downside could be a little muted because of the bullish weekly trend momentum readings that could put a cap on how much downside we see coming in the oil temporarily. But for right now, the bias is still to the downside of the market. All right, taking a look at the Russell My Hustle, as you can see, here's the slide we had this last night and this morning. We got the beginning of a bearish weekly trend momentum reading, and we're getting a lot of downside production from the crash alert ending last week. So we came into this week with the bias in the market being to the sell side, with intraday rallies being sold off. So again, today's close is going to be of vast importance, and it will set up what we see for the rest of the week. Will we have a turnaround Tuesday where the market erases all of today's losses? That is a possibility. But now let's look at let's deal with the elephant in the room. I told you guys last Monday, Tuesday, I told you there was a 95% chance of a sell-off in the market between Friday and Monday. You do remember me saying that to you on multiple occasions. Well, that's exactly what's happening. How did I know that? Am I a prophet? Am I psychic? The answer is no to all of the above, and I do not have a crystal ball. What I have is algorithms. You're looking at an algorithmic chart output, right? That lets me know where the money flows are and where the market bias is ahead of it happening. Before any indicators or anything pop up on the screen, all I have is these bars right here, but it lets me know in advance of a signal coming what the signal is going to be, and then the system gives us the algorithmic input and output as to where the intraday price inflection points are going to be before they occur, so that I know how to position myself. Like I said, sometimes we're waiting for the market to fall before we short. Sometimes we're waiting for the market to rise before we buy. Other times we're waiting for the market to fall before we buy, and other times we're waiting for the market to rally before we sell. So it just depends on what the prevailing market conditions are and where the market bias is. So that's how I knew days in advance to warn you that between Friday and Monday, which is today, that there would be a sell-off coming in the markets. And as you can see, we were spot on with that analysis. Had you been a subscriber to the PulseWave reports, you would have been positioned lovely to take advantage of that. All right, so that's what we see here for the Russell. Now let's take a look at silver. All right, so coming into today, same scenario. All right, so the trade has been to the sell side of the market. We got the beginning of a bearish weekly trend momentum reading, and you can see here where we're starting to get secondary downside production from this crash alert back here. All right, trend line support is the initial target on this silver move. Right now, the silver is obeying and pausing at the top of the Kumo cloud support right here. All right, so now silver has the potential to actually recover and put in a short-term bottom right here. It has the potential to do that. All right, this is possible. But for right now, until this day is closed and settled, we got the trend line support as our initial target. All right, so like I said, today's closing is going to be very important for a lot of these markets. Take a look here at your Dow. All right. Broke support, trend line support, just like the NASDAQ did so far today. Now, the day's not over. It can recover and get back above the trend line support. That will be a short-term bottom from which the market could rally from, and then that would make this beginning bar here. This is a potential beginning of a bearish weekly trend momentum reading where the market could correct even further. The thing that you have on your side is that the integrity of the bull market is still intact for now. All right, the integrity is intact for now. So because of that, you have the potential now to put in a short-term bottom. And then this could end up being a bear trap setup in the equity markets for the shorts. It could be a bear trap. You got to be careful of that. All right. It has the potential to be limited. How do we know this? Well, if you take a look at the previous bearish weekly trend momentum readings, the market did continue to go down a little bit, but then it just moved sideways and then broke back out again. So you don't always get just this incredible sell-off when you have the bearish weekly trend momentum reading, nor do you always get an enormous rally with the bullish trend momentum reading like we had back here. Had a bullish weekly trend momentum reading, and the market just moved sideways, and then, you know, it didn't do anything. So it just depends on what's happening. All right. And there are other, you know, bits of information that the process takes a look at, not just what you see on your screen. There's a whole lot more than what you see on your screen. And that's what we put in the reports that come out every day. The report has a lot more than what you see here. This is just a feeble attempt just to show you where, you know, how the price action's been moving. But even algorithmic charts are limited in their scope because your visual is not necessarily what the true situation is. Okay, so you have to go by the reports. That's why we put the reports out every day. So right now the Dow so far is threatening to go to the bottom of the Kumo cloud. That would put it below, you know, well below the 26,000 mark. If that happens, we fall off a cliff where there's no support, and the market could just keep falling and falling and falling. That is the potential of the stock indexes today. And it's not just limited to them. Let's take a look at soybeans. Depending on where we close today, we could have a crash alert for soybeans for tonight and tomorrow's trading, depending on how the market moves and where it closes today. We could be witnessing the topping out right now in real time of the soybean market. See what I'm saying? You got to look at these things. Here's corn. Corn has the potential to do the same thing. It all depends on how these markets close today and what they do the rest of the trading session. We could also be looking at a possible sell signal in corn today. All right. So it's not limited to just the stock indexes. Excuse me. How about the Canadian dollar? Here's the Canadian dollar. Again, the bias has been to the long side of the market with all pullbacks being bid. What do you see in the Canadian market, in the Canadian dollar this morning? You see the market being bid. Can't make this stuff up. And we knew that coming into today. We had our reports that told us where the bias was in these markets. Okay, take it again. Here's the Australian dollar, right? Here's your Australian dollar. So as you can see, the market bias is to the sell side of the market, and we're getting downside production on that. As you see rallies being sold. That's what happens in a bear market. The markets get sold. Now, when I say bear market, bull market, market bias, keep in mind that we're trend followers here. So we follow the trends, not just the macro trends on a monthly chart or a weekly chart, but we look at the daily charts as well, even taking into account intraday charts to find out if there is a trend, and if it's a micro trend, we'll ride it until it's over. Sometimes micro trends become macro trends. It depends on how long the money flow lasts. If there's a run to the exit door, who knows when it'll be over? And we won't know when it's over until it's over, meaning it will be over when the last person leaves the room. When the last person exits the building, that's when it's over. But right now, we have all rallies right now, and your Aussie being sold, as you can see here, according to the chart. So this morning's activity and this morning's news is affecting the stock indexes. It's affecting forex. It's affecting precious metals. It's affecting food, soybeans and corn as well. I just wanted to show you guys that so you could get an idea, get a clearer picture of what is transpiring this morning and how it sets up, and how the algo charts predicted this coming into today, what type of a market day we would have. But keep in mind too, it's not over yet, because this is just the morning. The opening bell has rung, so we're well on our way now in the morning session. Depending on how we move today, at some point you could see a violent reversal, which would confirm a bear trap. All right, so I just want to put that bug in your ear, let you know, don't get too hasty, don't get too panicky. Just trade what you see, because coming into today, we already knew that the market bias was to the sell side for the stock indexes and also for gold and silver. We knew that coming into today. That's what the money flows were. All right, so just want to just give you guys a little taste, a little example of how we do things, and how we look at the markets here at PulseWave Trading. All right, so with that being said, we got other things that we need to look for too. We look for prices, we look for patterns within the prices, we look for money flows, but we also see other things. Now, we need to talk about it, so we got to talk about it. All right, so for those of you who don't know, all right, you got your girl Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, right? So if you take a look at all the chaos in the world and you add that to the mix, and here we are. All right. Where does that leave us? We have a void. That seat at the Supreme Court needs to be filled, right? So what are they going to do? I don't know. I really don't. I just know that we got static now. We got a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. That seat will have to be filled. A body will have to be put in that chair. So we have to really take a look at what we don't know. And that's another thing too. There's a reason that we're seeing the things that we're seeing right now. It's a reason why Warren Buffett has been in the news nonstop. All right. And they've been trying to clean up his image, because, there was a lot of talk about him being, old and senile. Okay. And I don't know. I don't know. It's a lot of uncertainty. All right. It's a lot of uncertainty right now. And there's also a lot of double speak in the media. They say we're reopening and kids can go back to school, but then you got reports saying, well, we got, thousands and thousands of new cases of COVID coming out, popping up all over, especially in Europe. Okay. You got to think about it. You got to think about where are we? And I think there's so much news going on right now that people are getting news overload. Okay. They can't handle it. They don't know what to believe. They know that what they're seeing is crazy, but they don't know how to put it into perspective. And so they don't really know what to believe. Okay. And then you got, record numbers of companies that are up to their eyeballs in debt, and they still got to pay dividends to their private equity owners. All right. So you just have so much going on this morning. And I think it's frustrating a lot of people. Some people just throw their hands up and say, whatever, I'm tired. I don't want to deal with this anymore. But you got to look at, first of all, what is going on before you can even begin to tackle it. You have to understand where we are and how did we get here. All right. That's what you got to do. All right. So, what is one of the things that is happening right now? Well, despite the presidential elections coming on, despite lockdowns and fear of COVID, we have gender feminism, which is now the new left. And then we got Marxism. And you put those two together because they're most of the time, almost 99.9% of the time, politically aligned with each other. Okay. And you have to really look at, like I told you, the pillars of the new one world religion. It's based off of feminism, it's based off of LGBTQ and social justice. All right. And what else? It's based on Marxism, which makes the people gather because they can understand when you speak Marxist tones to people, it sounds good. It sounds right. But what Marxism is a gateway drug to communism. And that's what the people aren't being told. What is communism? What is socialism? Again, these are nicer words than what they truly are, which is totalitarianism, tyrannical government. Remember, under these regimes, tens of millions of people were murdered and extinguished under various periods of genocide. They were all done under these type of governing body setups, but no one likes to talk about it. All right. Now, you got to understand where we are and how we got here. Okay. Now, gender feminism became prominent in the 1970s and 80s. All right. It is called gender feminism because this form of feminism explains the world by dividing men and women into antagonistic classes, also known as third wave feminism. Its ideological successor is sometimes called fourth wave feminism. It focuses on equity for women and minorities. You got to throw the word minority in there because then it gives the whole feminist agenda a little street cred when you throw in minority. All right, so this is the use of social media as a political weapon, and so they've learned to weaponize social media. Now, the New Left was a broad coalition of liberals and radicals and unorthodox Marxists in the late 1960s. The word new distanced it from pure Marxism and the old left, which focused on labor. It's all about labor. Now, by contrast, the New Left championed cultural causes such as feminism and gay rights. Now, this is a Maoist approach to revolution. All right, a cultural revolution to change the system by appending the traditions and institutions upon which everything else rests. Now, that's why the New Left was sometimes called the counterculture. Social justice emerged in its wake. Remember, we were warned about this, all right, with your boy when he defected from the KGB and did a series of lectures between 1983 and 1984. He was warning the American people of what was to come. And he broke down the processes of this degeneration. Now, Marxism is the theory and practice of communism. It advocates Class warfare is a path to a society in which there's no private property and goods are available based on need. Now, the different schools of communism are united by some very core beliefs. Two of them: capitalism is exploitation, and people are defined by their class affiliation. Sound familiar? So when you hear things on the surface, they be like, "Oh, that sounds about right." But when you break them down and examine them and put them under the spotlight, that's when you really take the blinders off and you can really see what's at the core. Because on the outside, you have a beautiful, beautiful body, but on the inside, you have rot. All right. Now, all three movements condemn capitalism and believe that people are their identity, their race, for example. Identity is now the word preferred over class, but the words mean basically the same thing because class is a fundamental concept. All right. And their successors, examining how it is handled, can test how closely they are aligned politically. Now, a class is a group of people who share a common characteristic that serves the purpose of whoever is doing the grouping. A cancer researcher may group subjects according to types of cancer, for example. All right. Now, this approach is for the purpose of forging ideology and political revolution. So don't get that twisted. They all use relational class analysis, in which a class is defined by its relationship to an institution. Now, Marx used the relationship to ownership or production to divide people into capitalists and workers. Now, the influential gender feminist Catherine McKinnon called herself a post-Marxist feminist, her own words. The word Marxist indicated the movement's embrace of anti-capitalism, class warfare, and the redistribution of wealth and power. The word post means they stumbled over Marxist class theory of capitalists and workers. Make no wrong turn here. Stay on the path of truth. Don't get this twisted. Redistribution of wealth and power. All it is Group A wanted to take over Group B and they want to be in charge. That's all that is. So don't ever forget that. All right? Don't ever forget that. Group B says, hey, Group A has all the power and too much power. We want to be in charge now. And then they're no different than Group A. Everything that they said that Group A was guilty of, Group B then becomes guilty of themselves, and they do worse. Always remember that. That's also a tactic when you flip the narrative. That's like the thief who broke into your home and stole all your grandmother's jewelry. He says, well, I didn't steal this jewelry. It doesn't belong to them. This jewelry should be for everyone. Everyone deserves this jewelry. That's how they flip the script. And what's worse, they'll say, actually, I'm not the thief. I'm the liberator. You're really the thief. Your grandmother is the thief. Because this doesn't really belong to her. This should be redistributed to everyone. You're really the thief. So they want to put terms on you that they themselves are guilty of. All right? Just so you know. Now, gender feminists rebelled against this division because men and women were to be found in both categories. So this made gender irrelevant to class analysis. And so while accepting the other basics of Marxism, they use a different dividing line. Are you male or female? Now, in her book of Woman Born, 1976, Adrienne Rich argued that women's class nemesis is the social, ideological, political system through which men control women. Today, this is called the patriarchy or male capitalism. See what happens when you define these words and terms? Thus, feminist class analysis fused with Marxism, giving it an ideological twist, and this is what we come up with. Now, the New Left also deviated from Marxist class theory and spoke instead of power elite or the military industrial state, that is, state capitalism, which they viewed as capitalism itself. Now, the power elite consisted of leaders in the military, leaders in business, and leaders in politics who manipulated average people into oblivious compliance. Now, this middle class might include many workers, but they had been succumbed by the power elite. Now, the true revolutionary class consisted of radical intellectuals who led marginalized groups such as minorities or gays into political battle. Thus, the New Left fused with Marxism, but put its own spin on class theory. See, they're making up their own. They're taking bits and pieces of different things to come up with their own Frankenstein. Now, how does this all come together and how does this work? All right. You got to break it down. All right. This is the New Left and Marxism meeting feminism, which we'll call FLM. All right. Very interesting. Feminist, leftist Marxism. So where do we go from there? All right. So the New Left fused with Marxism. Okay. Gender feminism's successor relies heavily on intersectionality, which is a complex form of class analysis. Now, in this way, is which a person's different identities interconnect or define that person's level of oppression. For example, a woman is said to be subjugated by men. A Black woman is doubtedly subjugated. All right. But both men and whites and has a louder voice. A transgendered Black woman, and so on. It goes and goes and goes. Now, in calculating a person's total oppression, different aspects of her or his identities are added together. So a Black male gains points because of his race. A white feminist loses points because of her race. But the enemy of them all remains the same: white male capitalism. Now, the New Left's successor is social justice, which wants to redistribute wealth, opportunities, and privileges in order to enrich those who are viewed as oppressed. So raising the subjugated, however, requires grinding down white male capitalists who are responsible for the oppression. Now, one class must lose for the other one to gain. This means that the real goal is not equality. I repeat, the real goal is not equality, but what is known as equity, which is a form of political, social, and economic egalitarianism, which is enforced through the state and by law. All right. In short, the conclusions of these movements align well with Marxism. It is their methodologies that differ. Now, theory is a wonderful thing, but assuming the theory is sound, does it translate into practice? This is akin to asking whether understanding of a problem makes solving it easier. Well, let's consider an example. Those who have not been called racist, sexist, or the product of privilege are living on borrowed time. When the accusation does happen, its mere utterance can threaten livelihoods, reputations, and prospects for the future. Now, if the claim is true, then an apology is due. If it is not, then it is important to understand the context from which such an accuser proceeds and how she or he views the exchange. They proceed from class analysis, whether consciously held or absorbed from the culture. Now, the exchange is not between two individuals, but between two identities with irredeemably antagonistic interests. Reason, appeasement, and proof of innocence are not defenses. Simply by being white, male, or part of some other privileged class, the accused is guilty in an act of violence on two legs. This verdict will not change because it is foregone. The dynamics established by concepts like intersectionality are a direct threat to any person who lacks a high score on the FLM axis of oppression. Now, unfortunately, the way of today's world means that such concepts cannot receive the treatment they deserve to be ignored. They need to be understood. So you need to know that this is a developing situation. This one world religion is gaining a lot of momentum. A lot of mainline churches have thrown the Bible out of the window and instead have picked up the doctrines of the one world religion. You have pastors, instead of preaching from the scriptures, are now preaching social justice and Marxism and all other forms of redistribution of wealth and social justice over their pulpits. That's right. Pastors have now yanked off their collars and saying, now I am a social justice warrior. And that's what the sermons are. Sermons have changed from delivering the word of God to you on a weekly basis to now propagandizing you and radicalizing you to join in on the riots. Crazy, isn't it? Hard to believe that we are actually living in these times, in this day and age. But I'm here to tell you that they are all being played. They're all being played and considered useful idiots. I'm here to tell you, you need to understand that. All right? Because this all plays out in one direction. And it's not what most people think. All right? It is not what most people think. So you can't say that I didn't warn you and I haven't been telling you what's what. All right? It's not what people think it is. And it's not going to end well. You're all being played. All of you who are part of this are being played and being used. You're considered useful idiots for the powers that be. They gave you a cause. This wasn't organic. They gave you this cause. They're giving you the cause they want you to have, because as long as you're fighting each other, you're not fighting them. They're going to sit back and laugh and watch everything unfold on TV while your neighborhoods are burning. You need to understand this. All of this leads to only one way, and that is the destruction of the United States of America by death of 1,000 cuts. And I think this is going to all take place under the banner of the worst depression the country's ever seen. A moral depression, a spiritual depression, and financial depression. And you all are doing it yourselves. Government haven't done nothing to you. Ain't no tanks rolling down the street. This is the citizenry doing this to themselves. The citizenry are cannibalizing themselves. Not one bomb has been dropped. The people are doing it for them. You're doing all the work for them, and you don't even realize it. Next, on our next installment, we're going to talk more about where this is leading and how bad this depression is going to get, but how it's not going to look like the so-called Great Depression. It's going to look radically different. You're losing not only your rights and your liberties, ladies and gentlemen, but right now you don't realize it, but you are actually contributing now to your own starvation and food shortages. Not just food shortages, but medical supply shortages. Shortages of everything that you need to survive on a daily basis. I gave you a taste of that about 2 weeks ago, but we're going to touch into what's going on right now, but we'll deal with that in tomorrow's installment. So with that being said, remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. And come on and visit us at PulseWaveTrading.com. Learn how to break bread with us. Learn how you can put yourself in a better financial situation as all this is unfolding. And yeah, I see you in the live chat, my man. If you have delayed quotes on your TD Ameritrade account, go ahead and give them a call. You should be using the Thinkorswim platform and not the online. All right, you should be using the Thinkorswim platform, and depending on what type of an account you have, will determine what type of quotes and stuff you get. But to my knowledge, you still can't trade the pre-market extended trading hours on the equities. I think there's a certain way you got to do that, but you can call the customer service and they can break that down to you. All right, I will see you guys in the trading room, my man. I'm out. Peace.